Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Multimusic Technology. Today we're looking at this teeny weeny Korg Volca FM2, the new version of the very popular Korg Volca FM. It's a little DX7 in a box, or at least that's what we like to think or like to say. It has that styling, it has the sound, and now perhaps with version 2 it also has the feel of a DX7 to a degree. It's a really interesting little box because it is everything that people think it is and it isn't all at the same time. It has this ability to delight us with these cheesy old tired DX sounds that we somehow for some reason still quite like, while simultaneously frustrating us by having a worse interface than the DX7 had in the first place. I mean, how do you do that? How do you design an FM synth that's even less accessible than the original was? That seems nuts. I mean, everybody else who does an FM synth tends to expand upon it, tends to pull parameters out and give them to you in an easy to access fashion. Not this little fella. No, they're all squared away. And this has given me reasons to dwell and to think and to take my time over doing my video on the Volca FM2, because I think my initial reaction to it was one of absolute horror. I mean, my first synthesizer that I owned was a DX100 many years ago, and I knew that thing inside out. And so coming to this with, you know, the hobbled selection of knobs and the way that you can dig down and edit into every single parameter, it's like, well, this is a nightmare. I don't want this. Why would I want this? This is not what I signed up for. Why would I want FM in such an inaccessible way? But after a little bit of time, I kind of found that it started to open up, that I started to cotton on to what it is that Korg were doing, what the purpose of this thing was. Because although it's trying to be a DX7 in a little box, it's not that. It's a Volca, for heaven's sake. It's a Volca. You know, it's a cheap, cheerful box of melody and movement and fun. And I think once you try to force it into being a big, professional, classic heritage synthesizer, it's not really up to the job. It's not for that. That's not its purpose. Although it does a bloody good job at almost being that sort of thing, but not quite. But what I hope to show you in this video is just what it can do, a little bit of what it can do, why it's a great little box, why it's a fun little box, why the version 2 is so much better than the original, which I can sum it up quite quickly and to say that the first one was quirky, fun, interesting, 3 notes of polyphony, bit of a toy, bit of a laugh. Oh look, it sounds a bit like a DX7. The version 2, 6 notes polyphony. I can actually play a flipping chord, like with most of my fingers, and move to another one without it all cutting out. I can do that. It has reverb, which takes this mono sound, which is what you used to have, and spreads it around along with the chorus. It has velocity over MIDI, so you can actually play it like a synthesizer. So these simple enhancements really do elevate it from the position of being just a playful little toy of an FM synth into something far more elegant and nuanced and potentially interesting, which then all falls apart again because you can't actually get into all the bits you want to get into particularly easily, and it lacks some fundamentals like sustain support. I mean, that's ridiculous right there. It's like, what? So I can't use a sustain pedal with it? Well, what's that about? That can ruin a lot of what makes a synthesizer great, surely, perhaps. Oh, I don't know. So it's pros and cons, and yet I've got access to all these DX7 style sounds, and I can now play them with velocity, and I can wrap around the notes and bits and pieces, but then I just can't. It drops and I can't sustain. There's no mod wheel support. You know, weird things like that. The arpeggiator doesn't have a latch. So you've got to hold it the whole time on the crummy touchplate keyboard. So there's a lot of wrongness about it if you are expecting a DX7 experience. But there's also a lot of rightness about it if you treat it how I think Korg intended it. So So that's my plan. I'm just going to show you what I think was intended, why that's fun, then going to plug in some other sounds because you can, and I'll probably leave it there. I mean, I know you can use an external editor with it, but what has frustrated me by watching some of the demo videos and review videos of the FM2 is that all the time is spent somewhere else. It's spent in an editor, in DX7 or in Thomann, which is great. It gives you access to all of the parameters within here, but surely the point of a Volca is that you play with the Volca. This is the thing, isn't it? Not having to spend your whole time in a piece of software. Otherwise, you might as well take your 150 quid or whatever it is that this costs and spend it on the Op6 native plugin, which is excellent. You know, also by Korg. Korg know how to do FM. They've proved it with the Op6 synthesizer and now the software version of that. Fantastic. Advanced, modern, interesting. You know, it uses all sorts of different waveforms and craziness. It's brilliantly graphical and visual and engaging. You know, that's how you do modern FM synthesis. This is not that, and it shouldn't be that. It's its own thing. Yeah. So let me bring you in a little bit closer. Let me have a little bit of play and just show you why I think it's a cool box while also being deeply flawed. So here we are, the FM2 rubbish keyboard, first patch, Arctic, nice. On most Volcas, the keyboard is really there for just pumping in sequences or for turning steps on and off. But with the FM2, it's inviting you to play it as a keyboard, and it's a rubbish experience. You know, it is, but it's also completely possible. It is also possible to play in a ham-fisted kind of glory kind of way. But of course you can plug in a MIDI keyboard, which I'll do in a moment, but I just want to focus just on the box. So the keyboard is not fantastic, but it's not supposed to be. It's not what Volcas are about. But it gives you just enough to play some chords, yeah, and get your fudgy fingers all in the way. Now, I said that it now responds to velocity. Now, it always has. The original FM responded to velocity via this velocity slider, just not over MIDI, unless you got the later on hack that allowed you to do that by using an alternative firmware. But putting that aside, you can inject velocity in by using your fingers on a MIDI keyboard. But this here, this velocity slider, is a little bit of genius. And you'll find, or I've found, that all of these things are just little bits of genius. And the thought that's gone into this design is actually really good. Really good. So what does the velocity slider do? Well, this is not velocity sensitive at all. It's just a flat, featureless, there's nothing tactile about it. You put your finger down and it makes a sound. It turns on a switch. And you can get yourself between switches and it doesn't sound that great. But with a velocity slider, you can change what the sound is doing. Now it's interesting, it doesn't change the sound as it goes, it changes what the next note will be that you'll press. Because velocity within here, so it appears, in all the different presets, is tied to a lot of different tonal changes. So as you change the velocity, there's actually a lot of change going on. And it acts in some ways a little bit like a filter. And you can sort of do that with a MIDI keyboard and velocity by changing how you do it, but this relationship between playing notes on here and moving the velocity slider is quite unique to the experience of playing the Volca FM. Now it gets really great once you add in something like the arpeggiator. The arpeggiator is on here, it's important it gets its own knobs. So to turn that on, oh, it is already on. I've just got to turn the type up because it was currently on something else. So there's a simple arpeggiator, which is great. But now, if you play with the velocity, that becomes awesome. Go to another type. So while I'm here, I may as well just have a quick play with these knobs here. That very simply is why this is a beautiful little box. I'm just using the first preset. We haven't explored any of the others yet, and within that preset I can adventure into all sorts of different places. These two bunches of knobs here, the modulator and the carrier, attack and decay. The modulator is changing the way that the timbre changes, how the tone changes over time. The carrier envelope changes how the volume level changes over time. So attack and decay, that's your usual traditional way of shaping the sound, of shaping the level of the sound. And the modulator shapes the tone of the sound. And just by using those things, I mean, these are set to control the modulators and carriers within the algorithm. And that's sort of been curated and provided for you by Korg. But what it does is just bring in this level of change, this level of interest, where you can just take a preset and you can explore away without having to get down into the nitty-gritty. The nitty-gritty is here. You know, you want to press the edit button and you want to get into all your different parameters, then, you know, fill your boots, go through all your operators, get in there, man, just get in there, no worries. Yeah, I'm going to change, look at me changing everything. Or not, just play with the controls on the front and find yourself having a lovely time. I wish it latched. I really do wish it latched. So rather than latching, why don't we use the sequencer quickly? Let's pick another random thing. This one. Okay, let's turn the ARP off, and instead let's record something. I'm just going to clear the what's it. Now I'm sure there's a way of adding a metronome. I know it's in there somewhere, but I haven't found it yet, so I'm just going to hit record and do a thing. See, of course it's not going to be like that because it does it on 16 steps, you see. So I'm going to let that go, and again we can use velocity to change the sound. And we can start playing with how that tone changes over time, even on these short notes. The other thing you have access-wise on the front panel is the algorithm knob. You can just rotate it through whatever algorithms you like. Now the algorithms are just a way of combining modulators and carriers together in different ways. Some of them create more intense harmonics and other ones create smoother sounds. And so that's going to affect how these are operating on the operators. There's no way of knowing exactly what changing to a different algorithm is going to do. That's excellent. I'm thoroughly enjoying that. The other new feature is the randomizer. It's in here somewhere. Where are you? Where are you? There. Program a random. Now, often with randomizers on soft synths and hardware synths, it just tends to go, hit that button, there's an explosion of activity and nothing sounds anything like something that you'd want it to sound like. It's like a button of last resort. I don't know what to do. I'll hit random. All right, it just sounds stupid now. That's the usual randomization experience, I think, that perhaps you can identify with. Within here, it's different. It's contained. It's sort of safe and interesting. So here I have my sound that I'm formulating, and I'm now bored with that. So I'm going to hit function and random, and it will randomize stuff that's still keeping it within the realms of where it was. Now I'm going to hit a button and it's now going to sound completely different. No, but it's still absolutely usable. Do that again. And again. So although the sound is different, it's not gone crazy town. It's not gone radically somewhere else where it becomes, it doesn't, you know, it's no longer musical or no longer useful. It does things which are good. Let's choose another patch. So that for me, the fun, the change, the tonal interest, the messing about with velocity, being able to do it all in a very much a real time, playing with a synthesizer kind of way, is what really, you know, sets this up as a fantastic little box of FM. It's it's awesome in its own way. I mean, it's FM still, so that's kind of like weird and crazy, but it's just nice. Great stuff. Now let's attach a MIDI keyboard, just to show that quickly. And so you've got velocity response. But no mod wheel, no sustain. well, you get the idea. Right, last thing to show is just a little bit of how to get DX7 sounds in. Now, I'm not going to go into the DX7 thing or the Cinemaster thing. I'm going to show you a simpler way to load DX7 sounds. And if you're interested in those other editors, then I'm sure there's lots of videos out there that will tell you all about them. But I just want to get some different DX7 sounds in, and let me show you how to do that. So what you need is a MIDI interface, because the Volca doesn't have USB. I mean, why doesn't it have USB? I don't quite understand that. The other annoying feature is that the MIDI in and out is on TRS on the Korg, and it uses a different TRS version, so it seems, to absolutely everybody else. It took me ages to find the right adapter to make that work, and you don't get one in the box, which is a shame, because it's just a level of frustration you don't really want to have to deal with. But there we are. There we are. If you phone up a music shop and order one, ask that it's for a Korg, and they'll get it right. So MIDI interface on the computer is what you need. I'm going, what am I going? Out. I need out from here into the Volca. Now, you don't put whole banks of sounds across. You put individual sounds across. Now, I'll put a link in the description about where you can get some DX7 sounds. The ones I've got here happen to be apparently the default factory set, so that's quite exciting. And I have them here somewhere in a folder. Here we go. So these are ROMs. They're entire banks or cartridges of sounds that were for the original DX7. Now I can use this marvellous utility here called the Retrokits RK002 FM patches extractor and sender thingy. Again, I'll put the link in the description. But Retrokits made this cable that introduced velocity to the original FM, and for some reason they also created this page here which lets you put cartridges in it. So all you have to do is select your interface. So I'm using the MIDI fuse. And then I get my banks of sounds, so ROM 1A, and I drop it onto the cartridge. And then these, apparently, are the original DX7 sounds. To send it to the Volca, all I need to do is press on it. There we go, it's now over here. Nice, some strings. God, my playing on this thing is just appalling. Orchestra. Electric piano might be a bit more recognisable. So you can spend the rest of your life finding all the terrible cheesy sounds that were in the original, as well as some of the nicer ones. Now, while the Volca FM2 is being awesome in loading the DX7 banks via SysX directly into its MIDI in, what it can't do is do it the other way around. You can't export your sounds from here via SysX into a piece of software to save it. You can't. The only way of saving stuff, at least as far as I understand, is in that old school way of connecting the sync out to some kind of recorder, like record it onto your computer as an audio file, which you can then sort of pipe back in. But I can't think of anything that's more inconvenient than having to do that. since it has a MIDI out, why can't you just send the bank out and save it? Why? Just why? Because as I bring these sounds across, none of them are saved. As soon as I move something, it's gone. Back to what I was on before. Put another one in. But it's not saved. If I move this, it's gone. So in order to save any of these onto this unit, I have to overwrite a preset that's in there. And there's 64, only 64 spaces. So if I want to bring a whole bank over, I've got to, decimate the presets within the Volca FM. And the only way, and there is a way to factory restore, so perhaps that's the way out of this. But surely it would be better to be able to tweak and edit your own sounds and then simply send them out as a cartridge so you could use them in DX7, so you could use them in a DX7. Whereas this only seems to go one way, and I find that completely strange. So once again, it's awesome and then flawed all at the same time. So that is the funny little box that we called the Volca FM2. Both brilliant and cheesy and frustrating and weird. It's full of holes and full of highs. It has a lot of interesting tonal possibilities. It gives you a simple front end to an FM engine, which is based on the classic DX7 engine. So it sort of brings out of you a whole different number of emotions. How should I think about it? Is it a professional DX7 that's going to be an awesome replacement for that on your desktop? No, it's not. Although it can have the sounds, so kind of it is. It has wonderful velocity response over MIDI, but it doesn't have sustain. So you can kind of play it as a synth and then you kind of can't. And yet it has these fantastic controls on the front which curate your way into crafting interesting tonal differences and timbres within FM that actually would be probably difficult to do on a bigger editor. Because with that you need to know what you're doing. With this, you don't. You just turn a couple of knobs and explore the changing sound and how you react to that. And so this box is something of a dilemma, I think, but that's only if you take it too seriously. If you treat it for what it is, it's a Volca, so it's a fun box of sound that you can connect to other Volcas and create an entire jamboree on your desktop, then it's awesome. Great sounds, if you like those sounds, a great reverb, 6 notes. The randomizer tool, throws in a bit of spice and difference. The controls on the front give you something to play with and something to craft, and in that regard, it's a lot of fun, an awesome amount of fun. Sequencer is simple, like they all are on the Volca, does the job. You can put in some automation. Is that great? Who knows? You could probably make a song on it, but I doubt that you would. You're more likely to associate it with other bits and pieces and just have it as one of your sound sources. If you want to get down into the nitty-gritty, you can via some kind of software editor and fudge your way in, but I don't think that's what it's for. I think it's for playing with as it is and maybe exploring all of the thousands of DX7 presets which are out there, which you can easily just dump in one at a time. So there's a lot of things wrong with it, a lot of things right with it. Whether it's good for you is entirely down to your own way of thinking. I hope that was useful, and in the meantime, go make some tunes.